Okay, we're going to go ahead and call the meeting to order. We'll start off with Mr. Lighty. You'll call the roll.
Councilmember Hendricks. Here. Councilmember Griffin.
Here.
Councilmember Eubanks.
Present.
Councilmember Edwards. Here. Councilmember Oliver.
Here.
Council President Simmons.
Here.
Madam President, all 6 council members are in attendance, and therefore a quorum is present.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to everybody for coming to the meeting this afternoon. We are here to discuss the options and where we are with the proposed City Hall project. And so at this time, we have several options that has been presented to the council. So we're here as a roundtable discussion. I want everybody to be sure, speak your truth. Everybody's opinion is valued and appreciated. So we already had 3 options on the table from the beginning. Mr. Hendricks has provided us with 2 additional options. And then we also have one of our citizens also shared with us proposed options as well. So each
is a variation of the 3 that.
Yeah, not new options, variations of the other 3.
Yeah, variations of the other 3 options that we already had. So everybody should have a copy of those. I hope that you have had an opportunity to look at those. So please, 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 today, ask all of your questions. Speak all of your true thoughts. Because it's time for us to move forward with whatever we're going to do. We're going to build one, we're going to think about building one, or we're not going to build one. It's the council's decision by majority vote. So at this time, we will start our discussions.
Just count, make sure we're all here.
Oh, well, Mr. Lighty, call a roll. We had 6 in attendance. Okay, all righty. So we have 4 options, well, 3 of the original options on the table. And I know everybody has done their due diligence. Mr. Oliver has done a lot as far as getting some drawings, proposed drawings, and Mr. Hendricks shared with us some more combined options, also with some figures, with some square footage and all that stuff. And I also want to say that we do have Mr. Durham here, so if we have any questions, we can pull you a chair up to the table and let you be engaged in this conversation, so you don't have to speak from afar like that. So at this time, council, let's talk.
Well, I guess I'll start. I think our goal from the get-go, or mine, and I think it became everyone else's too, was to stay within the $48 million budget that we had. And of course, when we got the $48 million, we could do big and magical things with $48 million, and that's not the case right now. So we were trying to still find a way to build City Hall, to accommodate our needs and stay within that $48 million. And this is why we're at this square table. I know we've called it a round table, this is square table today with these options. And I think we've got some really good plans here. And since we started talking about this, there's been a couple of other ways that we can get to the space that we need with that $48 million, and quite possibly, which is also a goal, to stay under that $48 million and save the taxpayer some money, which is our ultimate goal here. So I think there are some good options on the table here, and as far as endorsing one, hopefully I'll be able to do that at the end of this meeting, and we can get on moving on, because I believe we're actually way behind of where we should be right now, and the longer we wait, that $48 million does less and less and less. So I think it's imperative that we get moving towards the goal line with this thing today, or soon, very soon.
I think it's important we clarify that what we're talking about here today is not necessarily a building on the space where that parking lot is, but where the old parking deck
True.
is.
Right.
And that is something that if it's something that we go with, we actually have options to stay within our budget and to work in a lot of the contingencies that we know come up as a part of these large-scale projects.
Right, and another reason that we're back at the table is because we all know that the proposed current plans was over budget. So that's why we're back at the table to discuss this, to try to stay within our budget alignment.
And I will add these options, by the way, the three that we have that Mr. Durham has given us, and the two that Jackie put together that are an extension of these plans, just tweaked a little bit different. All those plans are that location across the street
Right.
where the old deck, I call it the old deck, is right now.
Right. And from my conversations with many of the council members, and I would say majority, you guys chime in and correct me if I'm telling this wrong, but I'm just going by what my conversations that I've had with you, that nobody was really fond of the footprint of where it's proposed to be right now, which is right here, sort of, kind of, right behind it. From my conversations, the majority of the council have led me to believe that if we move forward with a City Hall project, they're interested in putting, as Councilwoman Eubanks said, across the street at the old parking deck.
Well, let me clarify that.
Please,
It
sir.
wasn't necessarily fond of this lot. It's that the $48 million we had, to stay within that budget, where we're gonna have to trim it down so much that it wasn't gonna give us much square footage right there.
Right.
And by looking at our option across the street, we could actually lower the building and spread it out and get a little more square footage and stay within that $48 million.
That's correct.
Yeah, I think that's what predicated it.
Yeah.
It was the only way we felt we were gonna be able to get in our budget and not then build a structure that had hollow shells in floors 5 and 6.
Or we not got that.
With no expansion, no growth.
Or it
Correct.
gets us away from a high rise,
Yeah.
which exponentially costs more.
Correct.
I thought it was cheaper to go up than go out.
No. No, it's cheaper to stay down. Well, Calvin, this is where you're gonna have to answer a question.
Mr. Durham, if you're.
There's a footage, height, right, where the cost goes up.
It's like the existing 7-story building that we have would be considered high-rise. And when you get to high-rise, there's a whole section of the code you have to deal with, power command, operation command centers, redundant systems and things like that. So therefore, in a house, sometimes that's the case, but in this application, no, it's gonna be much cheaper to go out than go up.
No, I was just telling her if she couldn't hear, she can come around here. Since you're,
I just assume sit back over
Department
there, to be
head.
honest with you. but
Okay.
I'll go with you.
So it is cheaper to
In
build
this case, yes.
over there than.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That's because you've got the room to spread out, which you don't have right in this side.
Can I ask-
and
Can I ask a question?
And we have eliminated the parking deck portion of it in favor of ground level parking. There is an option here that includes a 3-level deck that I'm sure we'll discuss here in a minute, which would save us even more money.
What's the occupancy of a 3-level deck?
In that space, it depends on how much footprint you've got. Over here, you're probably talking 150 spaces, 150
Okay.
plus or minus.
So option one is just a 4-story, 80,000 square foot building. What was,
According to this,
what
yes.
was the original? That we had to do, how many square feet?
98,500.
Okay, so we're losing about 18,000 square feet.
But part of that's eliminating the mechanical penthouse, which is 12,000 square feet, which you won't need anymore. That's part of the reason it's also cheaper to go out than go up. we had an entire floor dedicated for just mechanical.
Okay, so we will have that.
Now you'll have rooftop units now.
Mayor, I'm sorry, you had it.
I was just going to ask, I know as we've studied this, question was, in the demolition project for the old deck, we included 53 surface spots for there. If you indeed build over there, will you be able to leave that there because you're going to have lay down over here? Is that correct?
Yeah, but half of that lot, and these boxes are just to contain the square footage. They can be shaped in a myriad of ways. They can be an L shape, could be U shaped. It's just a mass block. But if you did what's shown, for example, in option number 1 here, half the site would be dedicated for the building and half the site would be dedicated for those parking spaces. But you'll get 53 parking spaces.
So you wouldn't have to wait as long to use those parking spots as
No,
is being
that's
done?
correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
So if
And
you,
when, oh, go ahead.
if you
Phil.
decided to put a parking deck, that would determine where your building had to be.
Yeah, you'd want to know that going in, absolutely.
Okay.
And when this city hall comes down, is demoed, and you've got ground level, if you added ground level parking over here, you could get approximately 100 spaces in this footprint
Oh, at
to
least,
go with
yeah.
that 50, which would give us another 150 parking spots to go with the current deck with 273.
Right.
Which would put us back over 400 spots that could be utilized, by the public after 5 o'clock for sure.
It'd be surface parking.
And it wouldn't cost $8 million.
No, it's a surface parking. It's got a cost to it. It's not anything like a parking deck, yeah.
Would that take up all of the space?
Depends how much you wanted to use. Yeah, if you wanted to max it out, you could do the whole thing. You'd probably get 100 plus places in there.
Okay.
But the trade-off for doing that is you lose the opportunity for economic development here. So at some point, you either have to make a long-term decision, do we want to keep it as parking, or do we want it to be developed to produce new sales tax? So that's kind of the long-term trade-off that we have to consider as well.
Question-
Which finances will drive all this.
The question about the parking, 53, that's included in the 774 demolition contract, is that right?
That's my understanding.
The
it is.
53, yes. On that side of where the existing deck is now, that's correct.
Closest to Jack's.
Yes. Yes.
In option 1, the garage is not included in this, correct?
Right.
That's all surface parking, right?
Only 3 and 5 have the
But,
parking deck.
but option 1 gives everybody under the same roof.
Yes.
Yes, but, my numbers, I figured option 1 is probably gonna go over the $48 million once it's all,
Well, it already did.
Yeah.
yeah, you got it right there, yeah.
And again, my question, and this is probably for you, Mayor, how many employees are now in this building?
Well, I'd have to go back and look again, but
Roughly?
I would say close to 160 or more.
I think it's around 130 thereabout in both buildings.
Around 130 between this one and the government building?
I think so. I could be wrong. I did bring that paperwork with me, but I guess
So would you like me to go through these options in detail?
Okay.
Okay. So Calvin had sent us 3 options, all a 4-story building. And anything I might misquote, please correct me. The first option was a 4-story, 80,000 square foot building. So basically 4 20,000 square foot floors for simplicity. So what I wanted to do was put project costs to that. And I did that with getting some information from Calvin. So I used a construction cost number of $550 a square foot. I think the original high-rise, we were around 500 or so. So I went with 550 to be safe. So that would put construction costs, including R&M fees, at $44 million. And at that level of construction, the architect and engineering fees would be 5.7%, which is $2.5 million. FF&E, which is furniture and fixture, 6.5% is 2.8 million, 2,860,000. So total overall project cost for option 1 at 80,000 square feet is $49,368,000. $49,368,000. I did ask Calvin if he felt like everybody could be under that one roof, and because of the mechanical room and all those things, he felt like we could. So that's with flat parking behind with approximately 50 spaces, 50, 53.
That's option 1,
That's option 1.
but with no expansion.
With-
No, really no growth.
Well, that's a question for Calvin. Option 2, he presented was a 4-story building, but taking the 4th floor down from 20,000 basically to 13,000 feet, correct? So this is giving us 73,000 square feet. So we're gonna get too tight on square footage. So this one also includes, including an off-site approximately 20,000 square foot annex. All of that is to be determined. But the current project cost on that, and this would give us a total square footage of 93,000 square feet with the annex. Construction cost would be $40,150,000. The architect and engineering fees, 5.8% is $2,328,700. 6.5% for FF&E, $2,609,000. And then the annex that we've considered is $2.1 million. So netting us 20,000 square feet. So that project cost with 93,000 square feet is $47,188,450. That's option 2.
Jackie, on that one, does that, the 2.1 for the annex, does that include FF&E?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Option 3, same building, 4 stories, 13,000 feet on top, plus the 20,000 foot annex. Everything is the same, except this one includes the 3-story deck with 150 parking spaces, which is, he's estimated at $8 million. So the total cost for option 3 would be $55,188,450. That's option 3. So 1 is 80,000 feet at 49 million. 2 is 93,000 feet at 47 million. Option 3 is 93,000 feet and a parking garage for 55 million. So the last 2 options, which is the part I added, brings it down to just a 3-story building, because that would put us at 60,000 feet with a 20,000 square foot annex, puts us back to that magic number of 80,000 square feet we were looking for. So option 3, 60,000 square foot building, 20,000 square foot annex. Construction cost on the building would be $33 million. A&E is $1.98 million. FF&E, $2,145,000, $2.1 million on an annex. Total project cost on that one is $39,225,000, which is approximately $8 or $9 million below what we were budgeting. So what I did with option 5 was put the parking deck back in there to see where it hits us with our budget. And when you add the $8 million to that, we're at $47,225,000. And that would be for a total of 80,000 square feet, 60,000 on site, 20,000 at an annex, which those cars go with the people that would move to the annex, and the 3-level parking garage, which is $47,225,000, and it gives us the option for economic development across the street.
Can I say one thing that everybody understands, that the annex that we're speaking of is fully furnished and ready to go?
Right.
With the type furnishings that we need to do the type business that we do, cubicles, everything.
Any questions on that I didn't cover on those 5 options?
One thing that I would like to see us do, and that would be to incorporate the demolition of the old parking deck if we choose the site. If this is the way we go, and if we don't, we're gonna have to figure it out anyway, because if we go with the new city hall, you're gonna have to have a setup location. So I would like to see us incorporate the demolition of that facility as well as this one into the price, if that would be possible.
I think the demolition's already built into the price of the old deck with Steve. Isn't
Is that true?
the demolition of this deck included in the bond money
Yes.
for the old deck?
So that's already taken care
Or
of.
the new deck.
It's not new monies being created.
Now,
That's a
the
big
demolition on this
Yes,
building.
yeah.
which we
Yeah,
don't know that
Shana
number yet.
confirmed that at the last meeting.
The funding for demolition of the parking deck, what's the funding source?
It's included in the other bond, in the other deal.
And the
And the $15 million one?
And the demolition for this building, I don't think is included in anything. And I've asked a few folks what they thought it would cost, and I'm getting answers of about $1 million. Now, you may,
Probably.
Okay.
You mean to demo this?
depending on how much abatement we would have to have.
Yeah, I
So,
think we've got most of it.
So
out.
so the difference in it would be, technically, the deck is more difficult than tearing down a building like this, is that?
Yeah, because you got post-tension cables to deal with over there, which you've got to protect the public from all that when you start to deep post-tension those panel cables.
Now-
This one, you just take a wrecking ball and knock it down.
I would like to share, if it's okay, the due diligence I did on this building, which is what I stated at the last meeting about, because, I'm one of those that wants to save old buildings if I can. And so I basically did 4 things. I looked at 3 other structures that have been replaced that were similar age and similar type construction. And in all 3 cases, it was determined it was better and cheaper to tear down and replace than to try to remodel. And those were all local buildings. And I asked the questions why. So, but still, that wasn't enough for me because, we could be different, right? And so I had a firm come up from Birmingham the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. And Gary, I think Gary's here. I did this with the mayor's knowledge in advance. And I wanted this firm to walk through the building with Gary and tell me their opinion, everything about it, pros and cons, could we save it, should we save it. You can save any building if you want to spend enough money on it, right? But we would be most likely pushing the same number per square foot if we did that, and that's without the unknowns that
That's fair.
that we don't know. So abatement, leaks behind the concrete, on and on. But what we discovered, the biggest limiting factor was the fact that we only have 10 feet between floors, concrete to concrete, and we don't have fire suppression, which has to go overhead. So we potentially would have ceilings in there that you could touch in a brand new building. And I was told before he came up, he said, if you've got 11 feet or more, you're probably gold. If you've got anything less than that, it's going to be a real challenge. So we kind of knew that. I didn't know that, but he did before coming up. There are things, Gary, like the tile bricks that are actually structural, not cosmetic, that were limiting factors. There's a column at the bottom in the basement next to the elevator that has sunk, and it's a supporting column. You can see where all the ceramic is starting to crumble around it. And there were just major issues that an expert could point out to me. And again, we were getting into that peeling an onion. And after listening to him and listening to Gary that day, because of the limiting height factors, I was told that our best course of action financially would be to demolish the building and replace it with a new building. And so I felt like with looking at those 3 options, plus having an unbiased person like I wanted come up from Birmingham and give me, an opinion on the side, it gave me peace of mind moving forward. And I would like to say I appreciate y'all's patience with me on that, being a new person on the council. But I just felt like if someone asked me on the street why I voted to tear this building down, I wanted to have more than just one reason that it was the right thing to do.
Did he give you an estimated cost?
I'm sorry.
Did he give you an estimated cost of what he thought?
No, but he knew we were at that $500 range, and he said you could get there pretty quickly with everything I'm seeing. And now, he did this at no charge to the city. His mother lives up here. I didn't know this person, had never met this person. There was no connection. But they work on a walkthrough, and then they give you an estimate if you want to hire them to do some of these things. So the only numbers he gave us was, for some of those things, but I wasn't going to bring that to the council after what he had told me. I felt like, so many of the council was already ready to replace it, and I was one of the holdouts. But again, I felt I needed to do my due diligence.
The thought of replacing this building started when? That was before I was on the council,
2019.
2019. When was
It actually
the,
started before that. That's when I was contracted.
okay. Did someone order an inspection of this building? Why was this building determined to be destroyed? What's the reasoning for tearing this building down back in 2019?
Probably for some of the same reasons that I found out. ADA is another one that,
Well,
the codes have
you
changed
called
so
for an
much. And
inspection.
Gary might can allude to that. The code changes and all the things that he talked about that to get this building to those things. 'Cause-
okay, you called for a free inspection.
Mhm.
Did the city ask for a paid inspection? Has this building ever been inspected? To say, it's good to rebuild, you need to rebuild it, or you need to remodel it? Or was the decision made to bring it down without an inspection?
Mr. Williamson, can you answer that?
Oh, you were looking for that one.
We haven't hired anybody to do an inspection that I'm aware of, and all, other than we have, last renovated this building back in the mid-90s is when we went under some major renovations. Added a fire alarm system, brought some to minimum ADA standards, the elevator, some of the restrooms and stuff. As far as asking for formal inspection, we haven't.
Do both elevators work now?
Barely.
Because when I came to tour the building, I was told not to get on one elevator because I might not make it. Just beat on the door and somebody will come let you out.
Well, we have
Was that a
call
fact?
buttons on there and phones in there, of course, to call them. I mean, that's part of the code that you have that and stuff. But the elevators are old, and we are under a maintenance contract, and, that,
And one of them leaking water. And we have a sump pump in one of them.
and it was actually, the sump pump was actually designed in there when they built that, just for emergency, off of this portion of the building.
Why do you think there wasn't an inspection? That somebody who works in the city of Florence decided we would tear this building down? Based on what?
I think based on the age of the building and the condition and the maintenance cost of this building, we had an asbestos study done on it back in the 90s. There's a lot of asbestos in it that we protect and don't disturb. If we do, we have to abate it.
Have you abated some of that asbestos?
Some of that was, yeah, when they did
Because
the
I-
renovation.
I
in the
thought I
90s.
heard him say most of it had been abated.
Some of it had been.
Some of it.
Yeah, a portion of it has, but a lot of these on the mechanical system, the pipes are insulated with materials that contain asbestos, and if you disturb them, then you have to abate them before you had to do an emergency repair. But yeah, we did some abatement on some ceilings in this building when it was renovated back in the 90s.
I like one of these options a lot. But I come back to, how do we know we need to tear this building down?
Well, let me say this.
I walked
my-
around and I asked the employees, and they all said you need to tear it down.
Yeah.
But they said black mold, which was dust in every case but one that I saw.
Well, let me say about this building and the layout on it. If you'll notice, it don't have a center stairwell in this portion like where my office, the building department is. So you got a lot of shotgun offices. Like my office is on one end
I
of the hall.
noticed that my first trip down that hall.
Yeah, but that's because it's got supporting columns in there, it does not have a center stairwell in the addition portion of City Hall building, so it's hard to lay out offices. You got a row of offices like one end. Inspectors are all the way at the other end from my office on this end, and the reception center, but it's not ideal. The layout is not, and that's common in the whole building.
Yeah, the guy that came up for me, that was one of the things he pointed out was the column spacing, which made a remodel very difficult to get the open spaces and the high spaces to make it the environment for a workspace that you really desire for employees. It was going to be very challenging. But you could do what I did. I just made some calls to find out who I could, because I did it for me, because I think we'd find very similar results if you found someone that you wanted to walk through it with you.
I have the same.
Well, I think the next inspection, if we go forward, no individual council member needs to do this. I think it needs to be a city-paid project. Definitely someone not in the area, but I think the city needs to take charge of that and not an individual council member taking the lead of that and certainly not paying for it out of their pocket.
Well,
I think it would need to be a city project. I appreciate you doing
and
that.
I didn't have to pay for it. And the reason, if I had waited and taken it to the council and tried to get a contract approved, we'd be talking about it this month. We would have lost all
We're
that
still
time.
talking anyway.
So, well, okay.
I talked to a developer, a local developer, that has done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of projects, major projects. And on the phone, he told me, he said, I'm not gonna waste your money and my time. He said, I can tell you right now, and his reasons were, he almost laid out verbatim what you said with the height of the ceiling and not being enough space between the floors to come in here and do a total remodel. And he said, you start on one floor and not disturb the other floors while you're remodeling. He said you could get to that next floor after spending a couple of million on one floor and get to the next floor and find out you can't go any further for some unbeknown issue.
Yeah, I think the magic number, Gary, if you remodel more than 60%, I think you were into so for example, the seismic has changed, our seismic area has changed since this building was built. And so a building of today has much more strict seismic requirements. So if we remodel more than 60% of this building, all that seismic work has to be done to it. All I know is that sounds expensive, but I don't know what that number would be, but I can't imagine it being a small number. But it was a lot of it was just example after example after example of those things.
Well, and you got to, in an old building like this, we're going through one right now with a handy rec center. We started out at one price, and anytime you start tearing into walls and floors and disturbing areas, you uncover problem after problem after problem, and it's a never-ending line of change orders. Every council meeting, we're going to need this much more, this much more.
Yeah. One of the things we talked about at a public safety meeting that Mr. Eason was there was that this was his thought, we really do need to redo the way we do this. And I think we're hinting at this by all the discussions that we've had. We want to see this project be done differently. And as I get to my point, I want to ask Mr. Eason, have we gotten the final price? I asked him for a list of the prices of what we approved and then what we finally paid. Because what I think we all want to do with this one is avoid that issue. We want to avoid the multiple change orders that we get. And anyway, what was the price on that, Mr. Eason? And then what is the final price that we paid? The new parking deck, please.
The new parking deck. I did bring that one because it is associated with it. The original contract, the total cost on the parking deck ended up $13,985,595. That's how much was spent. building that deck. That includes general contractor with change orders that only amounted to 3.09%. Professional services for the architectural engineers, LBYD engineers, White Linen Collins Surveying, OMI for some subsonic service studies, TTL for construction materials inspection. Those professional services for $851,000. $87,122 for the purchase of cameras, and $6,000 just miscellaneous. So I know that when the bond issue, the $15 million bond issue, there was $10 million set aside for a parking deck. We have spent $13,985,595. But every contract here was approved by the council, so the council approved every one of these expenditures and all the change orders. Yes, sir, I agree.
Yeah, I know, I mean.
Our back's against the wall.
Exactly.
Right.
So, Mr. Hendricks, I got a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What you presented when you went over.
Thank you,
is
Steve.
All the change orders, is a cushion factored in there?
The only thing
Contingency or anything?
that I feel like we need to add to this is we need to, with Calvin's advice, I mean, 3% change order is pretty common on a brand new facility. That's right in the money from what I understand. But we probably need to factor in a change order because we're going to see
So to
things
answer my
that.
question, no?
And one other though, that we also, there's operating equipment and supplies. I don't think that's going to be a big percent, but there are things like IT. They're going to need to equip some things in that building because you can't move IT in a weekend like you can a desk. And so we're going to need to budget, and we're going to need to get some numbers from some people on what the operating equipment's going to be. And so we're going to need to do a tweaking on it. It would affect all 5 options the same. But I'm thinking change orders either going to be 2 or 3%. I don't know what Calvin thinks on that. And then
That's a
Calvin,
shot
you
in the
got
dark, you just
There
never
was,
know.
I was just looking at that, there was a contingency put in, we tried to do
so it's
that.
built into the construction cost?
Yes.
Okay, so that is, so yeah.
Because that's to
3%?
prevent you from having to go back to the council and change orders, and at the end, for example, if we put in a 5% contingency, just to round numbers, and you only spend 3% of it, then you get the 2% back.
Okay.
It's not money you lose to the contractor. You
So
get it
really,
back.
we're only talking about operating equipment that we elect to put in it in advance if we have to have dual systems and such. Camera
Exactly.
systems,
Exactly.
IT, things like that.
Exactly.
Okay.
We have done,
Sorry?
He said 5. He said I'm rounding it up to 5.
Okay.
But what is it actually, Calvin?
I'm sorry?
You said I'm rounding it up to 5.
I just made up a number, 5%.
Right, but what is the contingency? I know, you made it
That's
up,
what I
but what
just-
is it really?
Hang on, I'll tell you exactly what it is. It was,
One is, when it comes to this building,
4.65%.
this project was started
They factored in.
started certainly before I became mayor and some of us moving forward on this term. Personally, I mean, obviously, being in this building a lot over the years, but I certainly would trust Gary and our engineers who are here all the time, and Ms. Bailey, because I think they're aware of things that you gotta live in a building. And I think, you know, obviously, the latest thing we did was some mold remediation. And, you know, that came before the council and, you know, basically the guy said, this is Band-Aid. It's not gonna get better. It's gonna get, you know, and, you know, we've had fairly good results, but, you know, it's deep-seated there. So from my vantage point, if I were trusting, I would trust Gary, I'd trust Melissa. I would certainly trust our 3 engineers, and I guess if we asked them straight out, I believe they would be honest with us. The second thing I want us to consider that y'all haven't heard, and I just, you know, obviously, we've been working closely with our utilities recently. Tad Cole told me yesterday, you know, he knew this conversation was going on. There's been some discussion for down the road. Obviously, I want as many people in whatever structure we come up with to be here. This represents development, building, all those kind of things. But he certainly is interested in a future plan that he would be able to go out to Rickwood Road and combine gas and water there. He currently, you know, obviously has water in a couple of different places. He'd have his old operation out there. So those would be individuals that would come out of whatever building. And I don't know what his timeline is, but he just said to mention that is something he's at least thought of.
Thank you, Mayor. So with that being said, and Chad talking about doing some combining there, on this annex, proposed annex, have anybody thought, or you thought that your employees, who would move to an annex location? I think that is something very important that we would need to know.
I want,
What departments
I
can go there?
certainly I want planning, engineering, and building to be here. I want people to be able to come and sort of the one-stop shop.
Tell those again. Planning.
Building, planning, engineering, you know, I think, you know, customer service, as people come in here, get, you know, obviously city clerk. So, you know, things that we might consider moving, IT, you know, if Tad moves out, you know, I mean, we had 98.5, what y'all are talking is 80,000. And 80,000, if you take the 12.5 off of it, you're pretty much where you were, and you could structure that for everybody. And I think as far as I'm concerned, hopefully you could get as many as possible.
Well, you got, for an annex, you got HR that could go there. You've got accounting,
Insurance.
insurance.
I don't know. I mean, we
can't rattle off all
obviously hadn't thought that far.
I mean, that's something, but, you know, we would have to kind of know,
Definitely.
you know, when we tell Calvin to go forward and design a building for our employees, we got to know who's going in there and what their needs are, and design it appropriately.
And of course, what I've heard, I mean, naturally, nobody wants to, if we move forward with building one, nobody wants to leave. But if you get an annex, somebody's got to go.
I
Otherwise,
hate
you don't need
to
it.
beat a dead horse, but this goes back to money. We've only got a certain amount of money to work with. And yeah, we could go borrow another 20 million, as some people would like to do, and build a huge, big Taj Mahal downtown. But I don't think we really, you know, the council don't want to do that. We want to stay within the money we got and try to, I mean, I wouldn't do it at my own house, you know, so I'm not going to do it with taxpayers' money.
Well, fortunately, we have options now that get us within that. So if we are amenable to any of these that have, you know, that we've got now, thanks to some different conversations that we're having, then that's what we need to do, Jimmy. That's what we need to figure out today.
I agree.
If there are things here that we want to move forward with, okay, but you're exactly right, Ms. Simmons. If we are going to have an annex, we need to know who's going to move out. And I would actually say that it should be public-facing entities that would go there, so there would be no gap in service from construction to meeting the needs of our general public who don't want to see any gaps in their service. They don't need to know that we're going through this. They need to be able to come and get what they need through the one-stop shop or whatever, and they have those people ready to help them and ready to go, while the rest of it, you know, is done behind the scenes and being worked on. That would be what I would suggest.
And I agree with that.
Yes, sir. Ms. Griffin.
Mr. Oliver brought up handy. If I remember correctly, our goal was to do 95% of handy. That was a dead horse that we beat for a couple hours. And if we had done 95%, we wouldn't have found the water issue. And so it would have been a wash, literally. Whenever we hooked it all up, it would have washed, and it would have to take it apart again.
Well, that's not true. That's not.
But
No,
wait a
let
minute.
him finish.
And I'm beating this horse to death about the fact that we have a parking deck that, in my opinion, wasn't maintained over the years. We have a building here now that things are crumbling, and we don't inspect them, we just tear them down. What I would like to see from this point on is someone with a name with the badge on. Their job is to do this on a yearly basis and report back and say, we do need to spend $30,000 more with Handy because we've got a water leak. We need to go in here and spray this concrete to get so many more years out of it. Let's stop building buildings and letting them fall in. Now, we get 38 or 40 years out of one, 60 years out of another, but at some point, we should be able to say, we inspected this, and this is why we need a new building. A shot in the dark just don't get it.
Well, one of the
That's
things,
my opinion.
one of the things we included in our planning for moving forward is we would have, rather than having somebody come in at night and clean, we'd have somebody, as far as maintenance and cleaning, that'd be here all the time to do some of those kind of things you're talking about that haven't been done.
Yeah, I think
Move
we
the
need a-
old copy machines out of the building.
We need a
Ones that are fire
maintenance
hazards in the hall.
department, just like the hospital has.
And facilities, maintenance
Yeah,
facilities.
Yes.
exactly.
And it could fall up under
And that was,
Gary.
you know, that was one area we included.
And this is the time to enable us to.
But I want us to
you know, do that.
remember when that parking deck was built, with the understanding it had a 40-year lifespan, and it's been there for 47 years. I don't care what inspections, whatever, but it's got concrete falling off of it. I got a piece in my office right now. So the liability, as far as I'm concerned, is significant.
I agree there. That's why I made a lot of noise about let's close it. Either it's safe or unsafe.
But we closed it.
I just want to move forward.
We
and
closed it, but we don't tear it down. I don't understand.
That's
We're
not what
gonna
this
tear it
meeting
down.
about, is
Yeah.
about, Mr.
We're
Edwards.
gonna tear it down.
It's about, that's a piece of it. The parking deck is a piece of it. The old deck is a piece of this project.
I voted against it because I wanted to know what we were going to do with City Hall.
Well, whether you do anything with it or not, you're not gonna tear it down. If we do nothing, we're gonna leave it up.
No,
Well, that's what we're saying.
No, we're not.
That's what I'm hearing.
All right.
So-
I said,
That's not what we're saying.
I'm going to vote no until we know what we're going to do with City Hall. And I hope we know tonight what we're going to do with City Hall. And about the business next Tuesday, let's vote to tear it down.
Based on the $15 million we borrowed for the new parking deck, we have $1,014,405 left. That destruction demolition falls within that. What I don't know, and I wish Shayna were here to address this, I'm sorry she's not, is if the rest of that bond issue had been expended. I don't know that. Did we put that toward anything else?
We did not. I
So
checked on that.
then we have the money in that bond issue now, and I think that, I wish I had known that. Did not know that.
How much you said that?
$1,014,405.
Which that's what you were talking a while ago about. To
And
take it down.
One of the last meetings, she
Thank you,
did
ma'am.
speak to that.
But we've had discussions on, why didn't we have an inspection done on the parking? We did have an inspection done on the parking. And they said things falling apart.
In 2017.
In 17, it's falling apart. At that point in time, there was a plan developed. Hey, we're gonna build a payment center. Next thing was a parking deck. Next thing, tear it down and then build a city hall, and then build a parking deck beside it. And that was the original plan. Is that not right? I mean, we voted on it back in 17 or 19, wherever it was.
20 plus.
So, I
I
don't see
think
why
at-
we would not spend more money getting an inspection on this building, and Jackie's, he's gone the extra mile.
Everything changed, quite frankly.
Right.
I'm not asking for an
Hold on,
inspection
hold on.
today.
I'm not, thank you. Thank you. I think everything's changed, and that's what's brought us to this point. If we could have gone properly in an order and we had no pandemic and we had no inflation and we had no other things that went on, we would not be here today. We would have been, cutting ribbons. But we have, and so now I think it's given us actually a really good opportunity to sit and think about the best way to use the money that we have and to use it wisely if this is the route we want to take. And I think that's where I was and am. I had one presentation, and it was a multi-story facility on this site. I felt like there had to be more to do. There had to be other ways to go about that process. And so I'm grateful for this additional information, and I'm grateful for the project manager reports that I've reviewed and all that good stuff. But that's where we are, and that's why I think that's why we're having this discussion today, because we haven't had the luxury of that.
Absolutely.
And we need to be able to right size ourselves with what we can do going forward if we choose to do this. Be the best stewards possible.
Well, I mean, and Calvin
Thank
asked
you.
my question about moving it across the street. I mean, it would be cheaper to do that. So-
Clearly.
So, you know, I'm not opposed to that. And the 80,000 square foot building, that houses everybody today. What expansion, how many more people can you get?
What
into
size
that?
does it give us to grow?
Yeah.
That's a question. That would
That
be a
zero
question
or
for.
that-
Well, you know, and I would say if there's a ground level parking lot on the other side of the building, that years from now, if we needed to grow and expand, you can always build onto the building over there. But I think that's years down the road.
Well, and, you know, I'm thinking that at some point in time,
Yeah.
maybe we put a parking deck on that side, you know, 10 years from now, or
Sure.
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I've said that earlier, that regardless of what size building we put over there, we can start with a ground level parking lot to stay within our budget. And, you know, things make a turn and we get in better shape down the road, we can look at doing another deck over there.
My concern, I'm sorry.
Ms. Griffin.
Calvin, will the new building come with an expiration date?
That's a loaded question. I mean, anything you build is gonna have a term of service. Yes.
How long do you expect this building to last?
At least 60, 70 years. But you'll find that, I find this more often in school systems, that you've got life expectancy of running 50 years, and 75, 80 years are still in it. So the lower the building, the easier that is to maintain.
The lower?
The lower,
And we're gonna try not to put 1,000 kids in this one.
yeah. Well, you know, you've been on the school board, you know what I'm talking about. And we had, this same discussion was happening when we tore down Coffee High School and built the new Florence Middle School.
I remember those.
And this went on for years, that discussion back and forth, the black mold, outdated code issues, compliance issues, eventually dictated the switch.
And I'd like to go back to Blake's question about growth and accommodation, if we could get that addressed, please.
Okay,
Will
what's
this-
the question?
What will this accommodate as far as number of employees and potential for expansion?
Okay, which option are we talking about? I mean, there's a variety of stuff on the table, I just need some direction before I can answer the question correctly.
Option, which one?
Say option one.
80,000 square feet?
Uh-huh.
Part of that's going to be eliminating the mechanical floor, obviously. That's the biggest chunk you take out. The other is how you address the auditorium. Do you leave the training room in? There are things like that. And so once you get those numbers down, you'll have to factor that big into the 80,000 and see how much growth you can do. Right now, every department has a conference room, which is a growth expansion into. And there's additional. The existing plan right now, every department has its own conference room, except one that has to
Even,
share.
even yours?
I don't
That you
have
do?
plans. We just have
Okay,
square
eight.
footage on these.
If you take the 98.5 and take out 12, what, you're
85,000,
80-ish. So you had some room for growth
yes.
in that. You know, I guess I'm saying with 80,000, if you took Tad out and his folks, you know, you'd have some expansion there. You wouldn't have to do that immediately, but as you need it, that'd give you some growth.
But again,
Okay.
guys, when you start talking about this 80,000 square foot building, back to the money thing, which is another reason we're at the table today.
Because it's over.
We're trying to keep it in the $48 million range. I mean, it's like I told you in your office the other day. I'd love to have a 10-story building if we could do it for 48 million, which is what we have.
But what we're saying in option one is 49 million.
Which is
Which is
over
over.
budget.
And that's what I've heard from all of the council. Nobody wanted to go over budget, and they certainly didn't
Well,
want to go
I
back to the
said,
bond
I
market.
said originally back that I'm willing to go to 50. We can do 50 and take it out of the
I
general
mean,
fund
we could-
budget
By the time you
in
get
2
all those
years.
jobs, it'd be more than-
But you do the same thing with the annex, and it's $10 million cheaper.
But you hadn't got
And
everybody.
you get the
together.
same square
Well,
footage.
so 80,000 feet. So
Yes.
here's, and we all have our own opinions on this, and I respect everyone else's. But to me, 10 or 11% of the city employees work in City Hall. And so I don't get as much as others that everybody, I think our essential people, and I think the mayor needs to provide us that list. But for example, and I hope Melinda doesn't kill me, but she's our HR director and she deals with 900 employees and about 100 of them work in the building with her. She can be anywhere. And so can a lot of other things. So, you know, I think the only way for us to get our costs down on this new construction, because that's the most expensive part of this entire equation, is to lower the head count that's in that building. And then that gets us into the budget that we need to be. And going back to deck or no deck, I have a couple of concerns about no deck. One, when we were, first of all, let me say, when the number was over $10 million, it was $100,000 for the extra 100 spaces we were getting. I was like, there's a lot of other ways we could spend $10 million. And then when Calvin did some more investigating, and the 150 spaces are very similar in cost to what we just built, that's much more acceptable for me to do that because, number one, again, I'm repeating myself, but it frees up the economic opportunity across the street. But since this deck opened, I get a call or two a week. You get an email or two a week about downtown parking. We're so fortunate that we're never going to have enough downtown parking, and having a 3-level deck attached to this building, similar to the original plan, is just going to do so much more for us moving forward. And I'm afraid if we don't build it, of course, it's never going to get any cheaper, but if we don't build it, we'll never build it. And that's going to be a flat parking lot over there forever.
Let me sum this up too, just real quickly. We can build 80,000 square feet across the street over there for $1.5 million over what we've got. Or we can go to option 5 and have 80,000 square feet, part of it over there, part of it at an annex, for 1.5 million under what we got,
And a deck.
and a deck.
Actually, it's less than a
Nope.
million under.
Well, okay, my bad.
But,
It's
I mean,
what?
it's,
It's
we
less
have
than a million,
48,
okay.
it's less,
We're
but the
saving
reality is,
money.
it's not over.
It's not over budget.
I think that's where we're going.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
And the reason our deck is smaller is because our plan was for 2 decks
All along it was.
in the beginning.
So if I'm not mistaken, I think we originally had about 500 spaces in the original deck. Somebody that knows that number can tell me before we had to close
Steve
part
should
of it.
know.
508.
508 was the,
Thank you.
and we closed part of it. We got 272 in the new one, 273, and we add 150, we add 150 to that. We're at 423, is that right? Am I doing my math right on the spot there? And it's getting us closer to back to what we had.
Don't ask me, I just missed it by
But we had
$600,000.
500 spaces 40 years ago, and today we have 272. We're going backwards, and I just feel that deck is going to do so much for the downtown businesses as we move forward, because again, we're just never going to have enough parking.
We're pulling all the employees out of that deck and moving them to the new deck, the newest deck.
Yes, but there would be less cars too. They wouldn't take up the entire deck.
Yes.
Well, let me ask it this way, and help me, please, help me understand. If we were to go with this and where there was the building here and the annex there, and we diversify the population of the city employees, do we need the 3-level deck? Do we have that many people who would be commuting to that building every day who would
And
need
that's
it.
You're probably
Lots of parking.
taking 50,
Right.
60 cars out of the
You
equation.
say
Right.
could we go with a two-level
Right.
deck or
No,
something?
could we go with no deck? Because
Surface
we're
parking lot.
putting people in a different place and we won't have that many here that would
And it has great
require
parking.
that. I'm not saying that I don't understand about the challenge of parking and all that, but I mean, my point about it is do we really need that if we're not gonna have that many people in
No
that
deck
building?
would offer 150 parking spaces over there?
No,
No,
50 to
50.
53.
See,
But you're gonna add
50.
another 100 right here where
Oh,
we're
at the
sitting.
annex, I don't
Well,
know.
not if you're gonna sell it to that company.
Well, I don't think we'd, anyway. So the problem we've got with parking right now is our long-term parking, because we've still not issued
Somebody has an idea.
yearly parking passes in the deck, right? Is that, am I,
They're in process.
because we needed the 30 days to figure out some things. And so it's not just employee parking that we need those extra spaces for. It's the downtown residents, the shoppers, all those things.
Well, and one piece with parking that, and Jackie and I were talking about today is, you know, one of the pieces that Chief Tyler was talking about enforcement. And, you know, I've had several businesses say, you know, we need to get folks out in front of our business, you know, they can't come in and that kind of thing. And resources for that. Employees that, you know, that come here, they're, you know, minimum wage or whatever, giving them the opportunity to park in that deck. And
Yeah, I would see the people in the 100 block, you know, parking in, using passes in the 150 deck, because it's closer to the 100 block than the others. If, you know, we chose to go that route. Now, certainly, I love the $39 million price tag, much better, but again, I'm looking, you know, over 40 years, what does that debt cost us, and what's the return that downtown gets for it?
It's a fair question.
So let me pause, put a pin right there, we'll come back to that. But let me ask this question. There's been several other suggestions about City Hall perhaps not being downtown, perhaps being moved right down there by the sculpture. So we know what we're doing, and if there's any discussion or any interest whatsoever, and if not, we can take that off the table and focus on where you guys want it. Is there any interest of moving City Hall from downtown or either down by the sculpture?
Yeah, that would require a referendum because it is dedicated park space.
Gotcha, okay?
And from the get-go, I mean, if it wasn't for several things, it'd be a really good idea. But I've said from the get-go, and I know Marty's heard me say this, Mr. Abrams, I'm sorry, has heard me say this till he probably don't even want to hear this, but for 4 years, I know we've heard several different ideas about where City Hall goes, but I've always been one to think that the downtown area for City Hall really feeds our restaurants' lunch business, and I would hate to hurt the downtown businesses. It really, lunch business for them is a big thing, and I think they get a lot of traffic off of us down here. So I'd hate to totally take that away from them, just everything gone. I'm just the other part of not only being downtown but moving it that direction was looking out for our city employees or who right now are having to walk 2.5 blocks to get to work, where if we're closer that way, we're going to get them even closer to the new deck, and we'll have a parking lot on the other side and hopefully a parking lot here as well. So they're going to be surrounded with parking, so they're not going to be walking 3 blocks to 2.5 blocks to work every day.
So am I hearing you saying no?
Yeah,
With all
that's
that?
what I'm saying.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Griffin.
I just want to be clear.
I look at you.
It's not.
I get you.
It's not that I'm thumbing my nose at the idea. It's just that those are the reasons why
Right.
I wanted it here anyway.
Right. Mr. Griffin?
No.
No, as in you don't want it to move anywhere else besides downtown? Mr. Edwards? And the reason I'm asking him, because if that's not a,
I have no interest in moving down there.
okay, Mr. Hendricks?
I have two concerns with it. I like the concept, but one, the referendum of taking park space away, it's going to really drag things out. We don't know how that referendum would go. And the other is whether we do a deck or flat parking. I like the use of City Hall parking nights and weekends because we know First Fridays, this parking lot here is full. We can't even park in our council spaces. You think about Christmas parade, all those things. And I hate moving all that parking down there because then it's going to leave two lots here, and it's just not a very good rate of return to make them flat parking, especially both of them. And so something's going to have to be developed to help grow the downtown, and we would just lose all that.
Let me ask Mr. Durham, wherever he may be. For any of these changes, will we do option 1 or option 5? You gotta go back to the drawing board.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Does he have to redraw?
He's gotta go back to the drawing board in anything we do. I
On
mean,
the inside portion, but I mean, the outside pretty much is, well, you may have to do a little.
Yeah, I mean, the outside vocabulary, the flavor of the building would be the same. Obviously, it would be different because it would be a different building. But the inside would definitely have to be, especially if you're talking about relocating departments and things like that. I will add to your parking deck question, I would approach it with you, Michelle, you were talking about Ms. Eubanks, if you went with whatever option, I don't know what the numbers are, that has the deck or does not have the deck, I would still design City Hall with the accommodation the deck could be added and linked to that building, which was what we were going to do here anyway. So whether it gets built now or later, that accommodation would be built in. I don't know if that answers all your questions or not.
I would like to know if that's the route we take, if we choose one of these options ultimately. Are we going to go back to the drawing board too with who we select as the project manager to work with you?
In terms of the construction?
Yes, sir.
Y'all never approved that contract yet.
Okay,
Y'all-
good. I would like
y'all-
us to endeavor, when we do make this decision, to interview each of the companies, please. Thank you.
So would we, I'm assuming we'd have to go back,
You'd have to do the
rebid it.
RFP, RFQ again, yes.
so basically, you gotta start over.
Yes. Well,
Other than the fact that you know what the thing looks like.
yeah, the programming and stuff like that's all been done. But as far as the actual physical design of the building, the interior and all that, all that's gonna have to be redone. That's correct.
In anything we do.
No matter what you do now. That's
but
right.
basically who you want where, you could still use a lot of that.
Yeah, the program that's already been done, we could definitely reuse that.
And the construction cost numbers with this lower building gets down low enough that we didn't get any local bids last time, correct? They were all out of town.
That's correct.
And so we could end up with some local contractors being able to do this project for us, which I would absolutely love to see.
We did ask BH Craig Construction.
But
were
they
local.
declined
They
because of
declined to
the-
bid because of their ownership transfer they were going
Yeah.
through.
So getting back, excuse me, Ms. Griffin, get back to my question, Ms. Eubanks, were you
Oh.
interested?
No, and
It's
it was
shifted.
helpful information that the mayor provided about a referendum. That delays it. I do like the idea. I do like where that thought is going to kind of broaden the reach of the city center to different parts very close by, and especially that one with the park as you come across the bridge. That's very thoughtful. However, the delay that would create as a result of the referendum, I think, would put us well into the future. And we've heard today some of the different department heads and others say that there is an urgency to a degree, but we are now doing our important due diligence.
And I think there's one more caveat to that is that you know what's down there. I sent y'all the problem with, utilities putting in there over the next probably 2+ years. Aldite's gonna be in the midst of all that.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be a
What are your
real
thoughts
mess.
on it? You guys call.
Yeah, don't let her dodge a bullet.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I might do a lot of things, but I'm not gonna dodge the bullet. I do like City Hall being downtown, but everybody knows that. So, there you have it. Did I dodge it? Did I answer you?
No, you just
without
said-
going all around the world? Just come direct down.
Around the table.
Okay, Mr. Griffin.
I was a part of this process. We bought the tattoo parlor build a EMS,
EMA.
EMA. And then we partnered with the county to purchase another building to build EMA.
To house EMA.
And I talked to Mr. Pettis today, and he's under the impression that we may want to put that in an annex possibly. What I'd like for us to do is to make a real decision and stick to it. I appreciate you making us sit at this table. We have different opinions here, but we're being civil and kind. And I don't think that's ever happened in Florence, where we all had a voice at our table. I just appreciate everybody willing to sit down here and openly express their opinion. I want us to do it right the next time that we do it. And we're close to doing it now. Let's do it right this time.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. First of all, I didn't make you, I did ask, and I appreciate you all agreeing to come to this. I think
I felt
communication is.
pressured a little.
You didn't feel pressure.
I appreciate the opportunity that we can come and sit down and openly have this dialogue.
I
see
think
people cut
communication is
their eyes
good.
at me. It's okay.
Do what now?
I see people cut their eyes when I talk. It's okay.
No, that's not okay, but I appreciate everybody coming and everybody sharing, because like I said, everybody's opinion is valued and it is appreciated. I think we have reached one decision today. Everybody wants City Hall downtown. So that is one thing that we have accomplished instead of all these extra
Well,
conversations.
I think that we want it downtown, and with Mr. Durham said, we want it across the street, because we can spread it out. And I'm thinking, if we're gonna get an annex that's gonna house departments, and we have a city hall that's gonna have departments, why not option 5 and add the parking deck to it, and that way you got a place for the park instead of, because if you make this property a parking deck, is it wasted space? I
Still
mean,
gonna have to cross the street.
so, I mean, that's what, that's what I was thinking
I
option
don't think you
one.
make this property a parking deck. We were talking about making it
No.
ground level parking.
No, I'm not talking about this, I'm talking about this property here, you can do whatever you want to, you can sell it, a company can come in,
Well,
or
until
business,
then, you
retail
can
can
be
come
a
in.
parking lot though, until if it
Right.
did.
My
But-
idea of it was,
But what you're gonna have is a $60,000, 60,000 square foot building along with a 20, and you could add a parking deck to it
For $47 million.
for 40, yeah. That's what I'm.
That is an attractive option.
it's attractive, so what we have to decide on, because nothing has been decided on, if you purchase the annex, if you want to move in the annex. So that's our next, I guess, major conversation. Still again, before we can decide what we're gonna do, if we're interested in, getting the annex.
I mean, I was
Well,
interested
let
in
me-
having everybody on the one roof,
Let me make this,
but that doesn't seem.
Hold on, let him finish.
I'm just gonna, I'm sorry, Jimmy, I'm just
no,
saying.
that's fine.
I was interested in getting everybody on the one roof, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, I mean, in a perfect world, if we had the money to do
Right.
that, yes, it would. But I think what we need to do as a council, cost of projects, they're going up every day, and Calvin can tell you that. The longer we kick the can down the road on this and delay, we may not even be able to afford to do it, period. And I don't think it's gonna go that long. But my challenge is I would like for us to take no more than a week. I think we all pretty much know what we would like to do and what we'd like to see. We need to get what we want to do in this man's hands so he can get to work on it and bid it out, and let's get going in the right direction that we need to go and get this done and not keep putting it off for a month or 2 months or whatever, because we're gonna, I'm telling you, we're gonna look up and the price is gonna be way, way more.
But Jimmy, I don't think nobody's kicked it down the
I
road.
didn't say you had, I said, let's don't do
Well,
that.
I don't think that that's nobody's goal or desire. I think that
Well, what would
we're,
you-
I want you to
I think,
update
let me
them on
finish.
parking.
I think that we're making progress now, right now, because we're having conversations that we never had. So I think today, we've come to a great,
I'm not disputing that. What I'm just asking you to do as president of the council, let's put a date down and say, on this date, let's make a decision. I mean, we found a date to sit down, you did, to have this meeting, and it was great. It's turned out good. So now let's put a date together and say, let's make a decision by this date so we can turn Calvin loose or
Can I make
whoever's gonna
a
be doing
suggestion?
this.
go
Can I
ahead.
make it? So, we've actually, as someone stated, might have been you, Blake, we determined two things today. One, so we want it downtown. Two, we want it across the street. I think the next decision is if we're able to do this with or without an annex.
That's what
And
I
that's
said.
not in our control, right? So
just said that.
Okay, all right. So I think we gotta move forward and get that confirmed before we can move any farther, because if it goes and we're looking at these options, we're probably back to option one.
Well, my concern too is that this old parking deck, if we go past January 31, it's gotta be rebuilt, is that correct? And it may come in higher. And we've just wasted that. So that's one of my concerns, is if we're gonna, you know, wait, then let's wait. We gotta make a decision on that thing. Buy things fun.
Right, Mayor.
I just want to be, since we were sitting here and we've talked about parking and the need for parking, Melissa brought up something I think we all need to understand, you know, over the last several years about parking and what we've done with streetscape about.
So just very briefly, the most recent streetscape projects that we have completed since 2018, so that's been about 5 or 6 blocks worth. We've added about 110, between 110 and 125 on-street spaces in the downtown core. What we have not done, so, and I know you've heard me say this before, it's kind of a mantra of mine, but for every parallel space, you can get 1.5 angled spaces. We still have streets that, as a result of the 2016 parking study that was done in conjunction with UNA, that we have not converted parallel spaces to angled spaces. Tuscaloosa Street and Tom Bigby are two of those that immediately come to mind. So, so when we talk about volume of parking and availability of parking, if you're solely only focusing on the parking deck, then yes, the numbers that you all were discussing would be very accurate. But if you're taking into account the totality of all of the available parking within the core, then I think you have to consider the on-street parking that has been added that would supplement what you're doing in the deck. And that was taken into account in the early conversations with regards to why were we not building back a deck that has 508 spaces? Well, because we were looking at the totality of parking rather than building a singular large deck. We looked at doing 2 with reduced spaces plus what we were doing on street
Well,
as a result of that parking study.
I remember us talking about this about 3 years ago, I guess. Do we have a plan to convert those parallels to angle, or?
I mean, we have a plan.
Yeah,
It's just a matter of, you know, executing the rest of those streets.
right. Well, I guess that's the thing, is all we got to work with is the here and now. So, you know, I mean, I don't know when that's gonna happen or if it's gonna happen, but, I hear what you're saying though, and
Yeah,
I get
yeah,
it.
it's just it's a piece of information that I think
Yeah.
you all should consider instead of just looking at parking as being in a structure.
Yeah,
In a
Only.
vacuum.
right,
So,
yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. Ms. Griffin?
I see annex with the price here. Has that been negotiated? And we know that's our price?
Well,
Wait, on
that
this
was-
annex?
That was where I was trying to go, is I feel like we need, like you went around the table with, you know, having it downtown or not downtown. we're not choosing an option, but do we want to look at options with an annex first? And if that's what we want to do, then yes, we need to do that next. But I don't think we've all answered that question.
I think we need to determine, I still think you can't do that until you determine who would go to an annex. I think you need to figure out who would go there. Because from what I hear, nobody really wants to go there. But somebody's got to go there to get it.
$2.1 million, has that been negotiated, or is that just, we assume that would be a good number? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Well, nothing's come before the council, if that's what you're asking.
Out of respect for the owner of the building who asked us to not go into complete details, it's a confidentiality thing, and
Where did we get this number to put on this piece of paper?
I just got through telling you, it's confidential, and it is an accurate number.
No, you said we were not supposed to talk about it. My
Yeah.
question was, is this an accurate number, or is it, do we know it's
Yes.
$2.1 million?
Yes, to answer your question. Yes.
You negotiated that?
I haven't negotiated anything, Bill. I'm just telling you, it's I mean, I sent you an email about
This
this
is just
a
the
couple of
furnishings,
days
right?
ago. Huh?
It's just the furnishings, right?
This,
There's a model, and that model spits out this number. And you on the council, I'm happy to share that model with you, but it's not confirmed, so we can't go public with it because we're still.
I'm not asking that.
Yeah, but I can share the model.
Everybody has a piece of paper in front of them with the number, and we've talked about the
I'll
annex.
share the model with you.
Is this the price of the annex? Because
In that model.
a
and
few
if that
weeks ago, it
model-
was 3 times
And if
that.
that model
did you get my email?
works
Yes.
out correctly, that would be the number. That's why we've got to decide if we're interested in the annex models here, so that we can lock those things down and make it a confirmed number. But to the best of our knowledge, that's the number to use today.
So you
So-
want to know the interest of it.
Number
You wanna know the
5 would
interest of it.
bring us in at 47
that what you're
million if the annex is at this price.
That's right.
But if it's at 4 million, we just jump to
That's
49
right.
million.
That's why we've got to determine if we're all interested in the annex model, so that we can lock those numbers down, because if those numbers evaporate, we're back to either option 1 plus anything else that we can come up with.
That's why my
And
question was,
time-
is this a firm number?
It should,
I think
Close
Ms.
enough.
close enough.
I think Ms. Simmons is asking a very good question. What do we do? I mean, and Mayor, really, it's you who can answer it. I can't answer it. Are people going to be asked to move to the annex? Told, made to move to the annex? Is that going to be the way it works if we go that route? I don't know.
Well, I'm still trying to put these pieces and parts together based on what y'all want to do. I mean, I'll be glad
So
to
the
be
mayor-
glad to do that. I mean, there's several ways to do it. I think we can do that, and I'll be glad. I'm not putting you off. I'll be glad to do that. I think I gained a lot of information based on what we've got today.
You'd be glad to do what? I'm missing what you're,
Find who to go where or whatever.
well, you would tell them, right?
It would
I mean, they work for you.
Departments.
That's not our job.
I mean,
Responsibility.
do you feel like there's an appetite among the city departments to be in an annex?
We haven't had that discussion.
So there's been no polling of city departments or department heads about that?
I don't think you can ask people, do you want to go or not? I think you got
You gotta
to
tell
say.
them. Your
this
department's
this
going,
department,
yeah.
Based on what relationship they have with each other, what they have with the public.
Sure.
And once that's determined, then you say, you're going. And if you don't like it,
Got to do what's best for the city.
Again, that's what I just said.
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
Do we, okay, then maybe the question is, do we, like Jackie's point is, do we want to ask of the options at this point, do we want to include an annex or no? And that would help us narrow the 5, because we've got to get
Definitely
firm
need to know that.
pricing on that. To Bill's point.
Who can ask first?
Jimmy?
well, yeah, to me, if we're gonna do this thing and stay within budget, I think, or stay under budget, I think the only option the only thing we can do is the annex. So,
There are people waiting on us to make a decision tonight. And not only the citizens, but with all these moving parts in this, that's what, part of the reason we're here tonight. If there's an interest in this annex, I think I can have you to the penny a number tomorrow, but I can with confidence tell you that is
Mayor,
So,
dang
so,
close.
do
so,
you know what the penny is too?
I haven't negotiated anything. I hadn't been part of that.
Why?
I don't think we're at a point where we can negotiate. I mean,
It's on the paper, gentlemen.
Have you ever
and
had
ladies.
anybody tell you or get you to do anything in confidence and ask you to keep
That's
something
not
confidential when you're
confidence.
no?
That's not confidence.
Well, sure it is, Bill.
I haven't said a name. I'm asking if this is a good price.
I'm trying to tell you. How many times do I have to tell you?
okay, point of order, let's get back to this and we'll come back to you.
And I
Mr. Edwards says that he's interested in the annex portion of it.
if we can't afford.
So we can try to get
If we can't afford the other, which obviously it look like we can, because I'm for option, option one. Get everybody under one roof, but we can't afford it.
Right.
So the next option to me is go to 5 and get a parking deck put in and if the city's growing like 30 years from now, that parking deck may be not enough.
But you like option 5 with an annex.
With the annex.
Yeah, if the annex is in there. So
Yes.
hold on, let me
Yeah,
continue
with-
on.
With an annex, I like everybody on one roof, but that doesn't seem like it's gonna happen.
Right.
So therefore, we're gonna put the annex. But I'm with Bill, I mean, at that point, then mayor could go talk to
We can turn it
whoever.
loose.
Sure.
And to go, and if they come back, Bill, and they say,
Put me out.
I'm sorry, it's gonna be 4 million, well, we gotta come back.
Sure.
Right.
And I'm with
Okay,
Bill on
so I'm
that.
hearing
That's what I'm
you
trying to
saying that
say.
you're interested in the annex. Okay. Mr. Hendricks.
I'm interested in the annex as soon as possible so that the mayor can start the negotiations.
Ms. Eubanks.
Annex. I do like the idea of the annex.
Annex.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Griffin.
Point of clarification.
Yes.
I toured with you, correct?
I think we did, yes.
When we toured, you gave me a number.
I will explain that after the meeting to you.
It's 3 times this amount.
That's right. That's right. There are
There's some
things we
other
can't talk about
parts that we've
publicly
been
because
asked
we've
to
not been
hold off
given
on.
permission to do.
That-
But I can share that with you.
Why do I not know it before we sit down? Here, I'm a member just like the rest
You
of y'all.
do know it. I sent you an email.
I will explain.
Bill, I know as much as you know. I haven't been privy to any other information other than what this
So-
number here and this number here.
So I'm not the only one in the dark.
So am I-
don't feel like I'm in
am I
the
hearing
dark.
this-
I feel like I've been informed on everything I need to be.
I've been
informed
waiting
on.
since that tour on a 3 times amount.
If it comes
And
back,
this is a
So let
great
me ask
deal.
this right here.
This is a great deal.
Am I hearing this that if everybody, and it sounds like everybody have the interest in the annex option with this. So now that we know that everybody is interested in the annex, so at this point, now we can get a more solid figure. Is that what I'm hearing?
Are you interested in the
I said
annex?
yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I did say yes. And then I went to Bill.
Then I was asking a clarification.
Right, so he's asking a clarification, so I'm trying to get that clarification.
So now
So
I need
if
to answer.
everybody is interested in the annex, at this point now, can we get a more confirmed, precise figure?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, does that
Haven't
answer your
answered
question?
He has not, yeah, he asked point of clarification.
If these numbers, they're in front of me, yes. If these numbers go up, no.
And that could
Because
be
we're
a-
already above budget again.
That's right. That's right.
I had one question. Are
Right.
these farm numbers?
No.
Had nothing to do.
No, they're not, right now.
But I'll
But
say
we
this.
talked about them like they were.
But I'll say if it comes back.
I'm asking the wrong questions for this crowd. I understand that.
If now that we turn them loose and he go talk to people, if it goes back 2 million more, then we come back to the drawing board.
We have to.
And
We don't
what,
accept it.
what Mr. Hendricks did, Bill, to do this is he created that information based on the numbers he had in conjunction with Calvin. So they're not shots in the dark, okay? I mean, they are relevant to the discussion, and
Every
they have,
one of them,
hang
except for
on,
one.
they have some bearing on reality. We don't know, and so that does, however, leave us with option 4, which is well under the budget that we have decided is what our maxim is. So I think it still gives us an option. We just have to be prepared for what that's gonna look like once negotiations go through.
Or
Option 4
It's 30.
pulls away the
is no
parking deck.
parking deck.
Yeah,
Yeah, and.
No, I know, but we're talking about budgeting now.
but you still got the annex in
Right.
it.
And for
So let me ask
clarification,
you-
Calvin had nothing to do with the annex. So, yeah, I don't want you getting dragged into
So,
the deep.
Mr. Hendricks,
Yes, ma'am,
since you got these figures correct,
for the most part.
I'll allow you the opportunity to you explain it best and put it in perspective.
To explain, but give me more clarification on what you're
Try
trying
to
to
answer
explain,
what
please.
Mr. Griffin.
I only have
said.
one question.
Which is,
The item line that says, this is the cost of the annex, is it firm?
when the negotiations are final, it will be. If it evaporates, then we're back to the drawing board.
Okay.
Well, if it evaporates, option 4 is a very viable.
No
We
option,
still back to
option, well, 4 or 1, but yeah, we would have to we need to confirm the
have to come back
annex
to the table.
can be acquired and at the number that we're using in this model. And then we can actually, at that point, vote on an option. But we can't vote on an option until we give the mayor the opportunity to get, you're in the real estate business, but we've got to get something signed that says these numbers are good. I'm not going to say they're good today when nothing's been
We
signed.
negotiate before we sign.
That's right.
Well, absolutely, it'll have to come before the council.
But we agree on a number at some point, which is the point we're at right now.
I like the number of $2 million.
Okay.
So
I do
does
too.
that answer you for now?
This is our number, I'm a yes.
Okay. And nothing is concrete because nothing is solidified and nothing, and whatever is going to have to come before the council.
But do you see why the first number I got from you?
Oh, I can see the confusion.
Is so different than the number on this
Right.
paper?
Well, where I'm missing it, Bill, is I sent you an email outlining all this stuff, and apparently you didn't read it.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Well, apparently you didn't.
I
Well,
asked,
point of
is this
order.
the
Point
number?
of order.
Point of order, yeah,
Let
and
me
neither
ask
here said the emails are not, we're here at the table, right, hold on, Mr. Edwards. We're here at the table now, so let's,
And we were
let's
friendly,
don't
so
do this, and let's
let's go
keep
back
it.
to that.
Again, I still say, everybody has an opinion, it is valued and it's appreciated. Give everybody the respect and allow them to get it out. So when we come back to table again, it's time to make a decision. So hear everybody out, give everybody the respect to let them speak their thoughts. That's why we're here.
Well, the question I asked earlier, do you have a date in mind of where we can come back to the table?
A target date, what you're saying, a
Pardon me?
target date.
We need a target date that we can make a final decision of we're doing this,
As soon
here
as,
and here.
as soon as, as soon as
You're the
or
mayor.
whichever one, y'all get me some totals, we can come back to the table.
I think
We'll be
you're
ready.
I think you're dead on. I think we've got to
You
get,
can't come back if you don't have
we
anything
got
to
to
come
have
back
an
with.
agreement with the other party.
And then you can bring it back and
And then
present
we
it to
can
the
say
council.
that that's official, and then we can choose an option and vote on it.
And look
we
at
can
real
talk.
numbers.
Do we need to give the mayor permission to go do that, or Jackie, or whoever?
It won't be me.
Well, it should be the mayor.
Do we need to make a motion, or just, you
I think
I don't
I
think we
made
need
that
to make
point
a
earlier.
motion of that, do we? We don't need to make a motion of that.
just give
I
him
think
permission?
that's
it's
part of
his
his
job.
job duties on a daily basis.
Thank you, Jackie.
You run the city.
So Mayor, can you,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir,
can you
yes,
get,
ma'am.
can you get that, and then when you get that,
Yes, ma'am.
Report it back.
report it back, and
Yes.
please, I would love to be included on that report, please,
Yes, ma'am.
as well as all the council.
So we don't have a target date.
We can't have that yet until he get us some figures.
Sure we can. He'll be living under that target date too.
We just gave him as soon as possible.
I like the idea that we go ahead and put it on.
Noon
the
tomorrow.
And I bet your calendar is the next council meeting. isn't
Close the
it?
business tomorrow.
And I think that's
Let
okay.
me, let me check that, and
I agree with
and
that.
we'll
I
get
like that too.
sort of a target date.
We who? Who is
We
we?
need to factor in.
There you
We,
go.
me, we, Elizabeth.
Okay.
Okay.
And please share it with me.
You're on
and
go,
we can
right?
make sure it's okay.
You're on go with us.
How many times
If we
I
made
said
a
yes,
decision
ma'am, to
tomorrow,
that?
you're on go.
You're doing
I'm
good.
drinking water right now, I'm ready to swim.
Hear us on the 21st, move forward.
I'll let you know. When the mayor get back with us with a date. We can't set a date yet. Anybody else have anything around this table?
Good job, good job.
We're gonna pray.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think we need to pray.
Do now.
Thank you all for coming. Audience, thank you all for coming, and we appreciate you all. And
We're gonna adjourn with.
adjourn until the mayor gets back with us.
All that.